Okay, this is problem 2.1.41, and they're asking us to solve negative 1/4 plus y equals negative 2/5. And there's actually a couple of ways to solve this, and I'm going to show you both ways because I think it's important for you to understand the difference. So the first thing is they ask us actually to solve using the addition principle. And solving using the addition principle would mean that I would just add 1/4 to both sides of the equation. And the reason for that is that if I want to isolate the y, which is what I need to do if I'm going to solve for y, then I've got to get this constant term to the other side. And since it's being subtracted, to take it to the other side, I would add it. That would cause it to go to 0 on this side, and it would cause it to essentially move to this side when I add it to this side. And then what I want to do is get a common denominator between these numbers. The common denominator is 20. And so what I would do is I would take my negative 2/5 here and I would multiply by 4/4, and that gets this denominator up to 20. And then the 1/4 here gets multiplied by 5/5. And that'll take that denominator up to 20. Okay? So we end up with here, when you're multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across, so this becomes negative 8/20, and then here, positive 5/20. Okay? And once I have common denominators, then I can bring my numerators together and simplify. So negative 8 plus 5 here is a negative 3, and then over 20. So that would be your answer, y equals negative 3/20. Okay, there's another way to do this problem, and I want to show that to you, because a lot of times what you're going to want to be doing in problems like this is clearing the fraction. We're going to get into problems that are much more complicated than this, where we really will need to clear the fraction. Okay. So what you do when you clear the fraction is you identify the least common denominator, just like we did to collect like terms in the other way that I just showed you. So the LCD is 20. And then what you're doing, instead of trying to collect like terms and getting a common denominator like we did here, we're actually going to clear the fraction completely. And the way that we're going to do that is we're actually going to multiply both sides by the LCD. Okay, now remember, you can do that because you can multiply both sides of an equation by anything you want as long as it's the same thing on both sides. Okay, so what this is going to look like here is this 20 is going to multiply through, so you're going to take 20 times your negative 1/4, and then you've got 20 times y, and then over here you can do some canceling. 5 goes into 5 once and into 24 times, and you're left with negative 2 times 4, so that's a negative 8. Okay? Alright, so here I'm going to do the same thing I did right here, so I'm going to simplify. Now you could multiply straight across. You get 20 times negative 1 is negative 20, and then divided by 4 is going to be a negative 5. Or you can do it this way and say 4 goes into 4 once, into 25 times, and then you're taking a look at what you're left with. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. So I have negative 5 plus 20y equaling negative 8. So now you see what you're dealing with now is something that doesn't have any fractions in it. And that can make it, more simple for us to solve. So I'm going to add the 5 to the other side now. So I have 20y equaling a negative 3. And then I want to get the coefficient of y to be a 1, so I would need to divide by the 20 because the operation here is multiplication. So to undo multiplication, I do division. 20 divided by 20 becomes a 1, so I'm left with y equals negative 3/20. Okay, so you see that we ended up getting the same answer. It's just a different method for doing it. And as these problems get more complicated, you're going to want to clear the fraction because it's going to be too messy to have to get common denominators and whatnot throughout larger problems. Okay?